Hey everybody, Honest Dad here. I wanted to do a video on the new Pope. We have a new Pope, Robert Prevost. He's an American from Chicago. His regal name is Leo the 14th. I know a lot of people get into the importance of regal names. I do not think they're as important as some other people. It's just a name, right? Um, it's kind of consequential that it is an American that they selected. And so let's kind of get into it. I want to first, before I talk about why I think the Conclave picked an American and why it's influential, I want to talk about two things. Number one, again, remember, this is a quasi-democratic process. Cardinals are not distributed, the voting power of cardinals is not distributed proportionally. Italy and Europe have vastly disproportionate representation. America has disproportionate representation compared to sub-Saharan Africa, um, Asia, places like this. China has no representation due to some issues with the cardinals there. But it's a quasi-democratic process. The second part of the quasi-democratic process is, again, according to Catholic belief, the Pope that is chosen directly by God. It is not a situation where people get together and they are like, hey, this guy will be the best for the Catholic Church in this moment. Every Pope from St. Peter till now, according to Catholic belief, has been chosen directly by God. Now, I dispute that thoroughly. I do not think every Pope has been directly chosen by God, because God would never choose some of the popes in the past, especially the popes in the High Medieval era that called for all these horrible crusades, the popes that certainly in the Renaissance and Reformation, popes that enabled the transatlantic slave trade, that enabled and defended the Inquisition and things like that. So I don't think that God picks every pope. I think God can pick a pope. If God wants something done, if God's will is implemented, it's just done. You don't know how it's going to be done. You don't know what crazy situation he's going to use, right? Is he going to use a shepherd? Is he going to use, a delivery man? But if God wants something done, if he wants a specific person made pope, that person will become pope. I just don't think every pope is like that. But that ideal that God picks the pope is really influential in the election process of the pope. So again, back to the idea of it, it's a quasi-democratic process because you're not trying to please the average Catholic or the average Catholic voter. You're trying to please God. So the selection of an American is really important for a few reasons. Previously, for about the last couple hundred years, the Pope was not selected from a very powerful country. It was not selected from England or France or Russia or Spain or the United States or any of the major power players in Europe or the world. It was usually selected from Italy. And certainly in the 20th century, we had a Polish Pope. We had a German Pope when Germany was not powerful. And we had an Argentinian Pope, and Argentina is a small, very weak country. And there's a reason for that. For hundreds of years, again, from the High Medieval period to the 1700s, the Pope usually coincided, like his nationality coincided with the most powerful country at that time. Whether it was, Florence being very financially powerful, or France having a big military, big army, Spain having a huge navy. The Pope was selected from that country because the idea was, let's concentrate the power so the Pope can call on that national power to defend Catholicism. Now, we are now returning back to that kind of status quo, but I don't think it's being done for a defense of Catholicism. I don't think the Conclave selected an American because they're hoping that the American military and the American people are going to start defending Catholicism around the world, because America is not a Catholic country. It's for a very different reason, and I'll get to that. But that is what's very consequential, is that the Conclave, the Curia, has completely broken with precedent for the last few hundred years in selecting a pope from a very, very powerful country, if not the most powerful country in the world. Now, why did they do it? Now, in my opinion, they did it for a couple of reasons. The first reason that they did it is that the Catholic Church wants to rein in the American Catholic Church. And if you are not a Catholic, if you are not a Catholicist like me, if you are not someone that kind of follows this stuff, you need to understand that the Catholic Church has a, global, international leadership, right? It's headquartered in Rome. But each individual regional church is basically run by its local cardinals and bishops. Now, the cardinals and bishops in the United States, despite what hardcore Catholics will say, despite what even they themselves will say, have constantly bucked the global Catholic Church for about 40 or 50 years. What they have essentially done is when the Pope releases encyclicals, writes letters, judgments that align with American Catholic Church theology, which is usually overwhelmingly conservative, the American Catholic Church is the first in line to support the global church and the Pope. So if the Pope says something about like gay marriage is wrong, or abortion is wrong, or we need to maintain the nuclear family, the U.S. Catholic Church is like, absolutely, sir, we support you 100%, because that aligns with our overwhelmingly politically conservative viewpoint. But when the global Catholic Church, when the Pope says something that is incongruent with the American Catholic Church's very politically conservative view of Catholicism, the American Catholic Church essentially just gives the finger to Rome. We've seen this time and time again. I know there are very hardcore Catholics that will dispute me on this, but the facts and history completely support what I'm saying. We know previous popes have condemned the Iraq War, which was something that the American Catholic Church didn't like. Previous popes have, Francis, completely anointed and brought to the forefront the sanctity of migrants. He wrote a big long encyclical, which is basically a papal policy letter that said Catholics have a duty, okay? They have a duty to protect migrants. They have a duty to share resources with migrants and let them in their countries and make sure they have food and make sure that they have dignity, okay? That not option, but Catholics have a duty. That was written primarily for a lot of the people coming across the Mediterranean, but it definitely applies to all the transnational migrants coming to the U.S. southern border. Well, that's completely incongruent with a lot of conservative Catholics in the United States. It just is. The previous popes have condemned Donald Trump, right? Again, incongruent with an American Catholic Church that before the last election had its priests stand up in a lot of the parishes and say vote for Donald Trump. And there's a litany of other things that go all the way back to the 70s. The American Catholic Church just simply bucks what the Pope is saying, even though the Pope is the leader of the church, even though according to post-Vatican II, which is a Catholic conference back in the day, even after post-Vatican II theology that says the Pope is infallible and cannot make a mistake on matters of theology, the American Catholic Church is like, well, yeah, you can. We're just going to do whatever the heck we want. By appointing an American Pope, the International Catholic Church is very clearly trying to rein in the American Catholic Church. They're saying, American Catholic Church, we understand that you kind of want to do your own thing, but you are part of this global church and you need to get back in line. You need to listen to everything that we're saying and everything that we're doing, not just things that you want. It is also kind of a nod to American vanity. Americans are diverse people, but the number one quality, right, if I were to define Americans right now, is vanity and self-love, ego. We're the greatest country in the world. I'm the best basketball player. I'm the hottest person. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. America is great. It's the greatest military. It's the most diverse. We're the most woke people. You see the theme here? We're the greatest. We're awesome. We're amazing. Okay, no humility whatsoever, no deference for other countries, no deference for other people and other times. Pure, undistilled, ancient Greek pride and vanity. We are awesome. This is what we do. We're going to do it. That's America's ethos right now. By appointing an American cardinal into the papacy, making an American the Pope, International Catholic Church, all the cardinals are saying, look, how do you appeal to Americans? How do you rein in the Catholic Church? Make an American a Pope. Apply to their vanity. Now Americans can be like, hey, look at that. Our Pope is an American. He's one of us. So maybe we're going to listen to him more. I don't think that's going to work. Americans are another quality of Americans, they're extremely independent people, very don't tread on me. Just because we have an American Pope, that's not going to enfranchise that many more American Catholics into listening to what the Vatican says. Some, but the ones that buck the Vatican already are going to keep bucking the Vatican. And they also buck them on the left too, not just on the right. You know, there's people, more liberal-leaning Catholics, that just don't listen to what the Pope says. So this is the main reason they selected an American Pope, was they want to rein in the American Catholic Church and bring it back into the fold. They want the American Catholic Church to stop doing its own thing. And another thing is they want to stop the American Catholic Church from embarrassing the global Catholic Church, primarily by doing crazy, unpopular, silly things like having your priests stand up in parishes before the election and say, vote for Donald Trump, when, you know, Donald Trump is universally reviled by other Catholics. The other thing that they're doing by appointing this particular cardinal, an American cardinal, is that this particular cardinal, and American cardinals in general, are seen as bridge builders. They're seen as people that have one foot with more liberal progressive Catholics and one foot with more conservative Catholics. And by appointing an American cardinal, especially this one, the Catholic Church is basically saying, well, we don't want to go backwards. We don't want to go forwards. We want to just kind of stay where we're at, appoint someone that can appeal to both liberal and conservative Catholics, and can kind of tie this church back together, right? That's another reason I think they selected this particular pope, was we need to maintain the course. We need to keep this church together, right? There are obviously very clear factions developing in the Catholic Church, and we need to tie them together, and this pope can do it. He can apply to both the conservatives and the more liberal people in the church. And again, not talking politically, I'm talking about theologically, and, you know, we can do a whole other video on that. What is it, you know, where is it going? We will see. You know, once popes become popes, they often do things that are completely contrary to everything they did as cardinal. I would not expect too much dramatic change. You know, you're not going to see priests being able to marry. You're not going to see serious inquests and serious healing over the, you know, the sexual abuse scandals in the church. You're not going to see serious inquests and serious healing over, you know, the church's role in the transatlantic slave trade and stuff like that. That's all been apologized for, which is great. But you need to go beyond apology. You're certainly not going to see stuff like, you know, the church allowing homeless people to stay in St. Peter's Basilica. That's out of the question. Even though that's something Jesus would do, right? This is something that God would do. That's not something that God's church on earth will ever do, which is ludicrous, right? But that's just kind of the way it is, unfortunately. Beyond that, I mean, this is not super consequential because it's not going to attain the goal that it's designed for. I think that this particular pope is not really going to be able to hold together the church any better than any other ones, because what's driving apart the church is archaic doctrine, is, you know, songs that were written in the 600s when the Protestants are using really beautiful songs based on beautiful stories that are just enfranchising all kinds of people. It's not going to affect the fact that humans are being driven apart massively by social media and things like that. I also don't know, like I said, I don't think and I don't know how effective it is going to be in reining in American Catholics. Again, American Catholic Church kind of does its own thing. It's not necessarily going to listen to this pope any more than the next one. You know, like all things, we will see. But I don't predict that the future of the Catholic Church is really going to change much through this election. I mean, the church is going to continue to lose membership like a sieve. It's going to continually be internally divided between these factions. It's going to continue to be caught in this intense miasma of theological overplaying. And what I mean, and I'm going to do a whole video on this. But what I mean by theologically overplaying is, you know, you have a Bible that is this big. And then at this point, you have Catholic commentaries and theological commentaries on that Bible, okay, on God's actual word that's taller than me. And you have this whole section of Catholic theology that's called apologetics, which is essential goal is to take something very, very basic, like priests can't marry, to blow up that to the absolute stratosphere, and to talk about why priests can't marry for 700 pages in extremely complex legalistic terms that 2% of the population can understand, all to come up with the same conclusion at the end of that book, the end of that missive, that the doctrine is priests can't marry. Priests can't marry. We believe what we believe, and we believe it. Right? That's not a message. Well, that's not God's message. First of all, that's not Jesus' message. Second of all, that's also not a message that's going to capture people's hearts. Just saying we're Catholics and we have an awesome church and we believe what we believe, come back, Catholics come home. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. But this Pope, obviously thoughts and prayers. Hope he has a great reign. He's younger, so he's probably going to be Pope for 20 years. So he can definitely be consequential. But again, considering some of the cardinals that were out there, I don't think that there is going to be too much movement on a lot of these issues. But again, could be wrong. Thanks, guys.